Welcome back, everybody. You're here on the night shift with Blackwell, and tonight we're getting up close and personal with the unified Orc war clans. Of course, you don't want to get too up close and personal because they're stinking filthy beasts. Okay, so you want to get... Alright, so we're going to start the show off with some blatant orc bigotry, okay? We're just going to go, we'll take it from there, right? Alright, so, okay, so let's take a look, okay? The Unified Orc War Clans, the Concord, the Xanthan, and the Blood Orcs. Alright, so, so we spoke a little bit about the comparison between the two factions. This one having a total higher cost in general, but also a higher total of combat and cunning. Okay, so we looked at the Forge of Vortices as a comparison with the version from the Champions faction, the Forge of Prophecy. Okay, so just a couple of little things to kind of mirror the two clans and show the difference between them. I mean, here we have draw 2 cards, then discard or destroy a card in your hand. Okay, if you destroy a non-elemental card using this effect, gain 1 influence. Alright, so a way of using destruction to gain power. Okay, the Forge of Vortices may subtly shift the flow of energy that guides the cosmos. Alright, so it's a subtle shift, but it's giving you that ability to, you know, kind of move things around. You know, here was something that was going to be, and now instead it's not going to be, it's destroyed. Alright, a dark purple, medium, small, chest-like forge, open, with intercrossing wind image wormholes above it. Wind image? Alright, yeah, wind image. I guess just like a faded kind of image is what I meant with this. I don't know. But you get the idea. These little vortices that open up over the forge. Okay. And now the main artifact from the orcs is the Mongol of Marrow. Alright, and I do have a preliminary idea of what I want this thing to look like. It's basically like a cross that has different gemstones representing the different orc clans. And they're colored according to the color of the orc. Okay, so you have the Concord are green, the Xanthan are yellow, the Blood Orcs are red, the Penumbra are black, the Ghoulshade are white, and the Primeval are gray. Alright, and this is going to become an important artifact later on in the lore as we move forward, how the Xanthan orcs kind of hijack the entire orc culture, and they use the Mongol of Marrow symbolically to kind of rearrange the hierarchy. The Mongol of Marrow has a cost of 9, it's pretty high. All orc units gain +2 common, +2 cunning this phase. Alright, so just a general across the board bump to all your units. All your orc units. Not all the units in this faction are going to be orcs, as we'll see. Otherwise known as the 6 stone star, this ancient artifact is the premier symbol of unified orc heritage. Alright, it's an acknowledgement of the fact, you know, the cross shape, it comes up from the bottom and then flourishes out. Right, kind of like a tree. So the unified orc heritage, that they all have a common ancestry. All right, and the primeval are considered the, you know, the touchstone to that history. They're considered the ones from which all the other orcs have branched out and become. The primeval are sort of a bestial horde of orcs. They're kind of, I mean, not entirely. I mean, but kind of their characteristics are kind of animalistic in a sense. So they're very like in a base level of consciousness. But they're considered to represent, you know, that unified history from which all others have sprung forth from. Okay, so medium-sized cross with 4 arms depicting gems of the 6 orc group colors as we saw. Okay. And now the melee attachment, heavy flail. There's going to be 4 of these, so pretty common. 5, kind of an average cost. This unit, the attached unit gains +3 combat, but opposing units and captains gain +1 defense. This weapon can pierce armor and sunder shields, though its weight makes it difficult to wield. Alright, so I'm kind of picturing like the thing that Sauron had in the Lord of the Rings, you know, that big, giant, like bell-shaped, oh, here it is, bell-shaped, multi-layered spiked flail. You know, something like that, but not as big. But, you know, it's not just your normal flail. It's kind of like big and has a lot of spikes coming off of it. And so the idea is that opposing units are going to gain +1 defense. So you say, well, why are you going to give them +3 comm, and then you're going to raise opposing units and captains by +1 defense? Isn't that, in effect, just making this +2 combat as a bonus? But no, because you remember, you still can use combat to destroy equipment, okay? And so you can use this thing to destroy a piece of equipment pretty readily, but when you're actually against another, you know, thinking enemy, you know, they're going to be able to dodge a little bit easier because of the difficulty of wielding this thing. You kind of telegraph what you're doing as you try and rev up and swing this. Alright, so that's why we're giving them that +1 defense to compensate. But if you just want to smash something on the ground, well, then that's no problem. Okay? So, so you do have the opportunity to get this +3 at a pretty good price, you know, with this little qualifying factor. Next is the strongbow. 3 of these, same price, 5. The attached unit gains +2 combat. Opposing captains have their defense reduced by 2. Okay, so you say, well, why are you paying the same for a lower combat bonus? Because instead of having that negative qualifier, now you have a positive to go along with it. So the reason why it's affecting captains and not other units is because the idea of the strongbow, a very straight bow, hardly bent, with an unusually thick handle. The strongbow is incredibly accurate over long distances. So the idea is that you're kind of shooting out over the active field to hit the captains who are in the battlefield. Okay, so it's only reducing them by 2, not the regular units. Okay, now we move into the tactics. So the battle anthem. Alright, 3 of these. Units played this phase gain +2 comm. So again, another bump. You can see how they're, you know, they're getting a lot of combat bonuses, the orcs. Can you hear the marching song? It is the sound of zeal for the waning of life. That's War Sage Grave Song, talking about the battle anthem. Who is he talking about? Perhaps the Blood Orcs, his own allies, you know, who, you know, march into battle and, you know, are excited to kill, you know. And that doesn't sit too well with War Sage Grave Song, and not even that it's a criticism per se, but just kind of a pointing out of what it really is. You know, he's involved in this thing too, and they have to go out and they have to, you know, battle the enemy, and that has its inevitable results. It doesn't mean that he's happy about it, you see. So even if this is his own guys marching off and singing, you know, I don't think that he would say go out and sing. But, you know, guys sometimes come up with this stuff on their own. You know, the soldiers, they out there in the trenches, they come up with these little things that they do, handshakes and little songs or whatever it is. And so, you know, whoever he's hearing here, he's just kind of offering this reminder of what it is, you know. I mean, it's not something that, you know, is a wonderful thing. All right? And so they're excited about this unfortunate scenario, you know. So he's kind of pointing, you know, the lack of wisdom a little bit in that. Alright, so the mass of marching blood orcs raising their weapons and calling out. Okay. When we think of that zeal for killing, the blood orcs come to mind, and so we're going to put them on that card. Alright, then we looked at cohesion as kind of a mirror to the cooperation tactic of the champions, and how this has a little bit of an opposite idea. Of course, you may discard this card from your hand to draw a card, but also if 2 or more units of the same group are played this phase, choose 2 of those units to gain +1 combat and +1 cunning. Our solidarity is our strength. You see, so it's kind of like our unity as a clan, as opposed to cooperation with the other clans. All right, and so I probably want to change this from War Sage Gravesong to maybe one of the Blood Orc captains or faction leaders, just because of what this is supposed to be saying. This card is supposed to be saying, you know, there's a focus on the clan unity over the overall unity. All right, and so War Sage Gravesong wouldn't be the best representative of that. We could still keep this quote and just offer it to somebody else. We'll see. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, No, I don't know. I'm not sure who it is. I gotta go through and look and see who I think that might suit best. I was thinking of Ogre, who's one of the Blood Orc faction leaders, but he's kind of a dominator, and he's not one to really be talking about solidarity because he's very ego-driven and, you know, self-centered in a sense, you know. So we'll see. Soberhold sentinels standing in a row, creating a shield wall. All right, so I think that's why I put Gravesong here, is because I had the idea of the Soberhold sentinels, because they really do represent solidarity. But I want to paint the solidarity almost in a negative light here, so I don't know if I want to use the Soberhold sentinels for that. We'll see. Again, these little kind of flavor things are, you know, one of the last things that need to really be refined. But they're all, you know, it's all here because, as I said, I operate on inspiration, and so, you know, I get these ideas as I'm working, so I might as well put them in. And so that's what I do. But, yeah, we can refine that as we go forward. All right, so diversion. For cost, you get +2 cunning right off the bat, okay? Because, again, it's a, you know, it's a cunning kind of strategy. It's not, you know, an attack. But it does have this strike ability, which is a sabotage. Choose an opponent to discard the top card of their deck. If it's a unit, place it into the active field. All right? So instead of that unit being available to do something for that player on the following turn, it's instead going to go back into the active field. So it's like he's being diverted away from his mission and winding up back out in the general population. The greatest stealth is for your enemy to be looking elsewhere. That's Dirksen, the Xanthan Minister of Sorcery. Okay. Single Blood Orc group raising sword and yelling while dwarves rush towards him. Oh, if it's a group, then it would be them. Xanthan soldiers hidden by rocks prepare to raid a supply stash. Okay. Single Blood Orc group. Yeah, I think I wanted it to be a single Blood Orc initially, but then I changed it to a small group of them. And dwarves are running over to deal with them, and the Xanthan soldiers are going to go raid the stash while their attention is being diverted. Okay, now units. Backstabber. We spoke about the Backstabber previously. He's got +2 comm and +2 cunning here. And a strike ability. Again, sabotage. Discard the top card of your deck and of the opponent's deck. You may return one of these cards to the top of the deck it came from. Okay. Why trust to luck when you can make your own? Dolor the Heartstormer. Alright, so the Backstabber, you're discarding the top card of both decks. Alright, and you may return one of them to the top of the deck where it came from. Now, this could backfire on you. Alright, and that's where the Backstab comes in. You're not just discarding one of your opponent's cards, you're also discarding one of your own. And this could work out to your benefit or not, depending on how it works out, because you know, you may want to return both of them to the top. Maybe he's got an attrition that you just discarded, and you've got your best unit. So say, oh, geez, you know, I mean, I want to get my best unit back, but I want him to have that attrition. So if I give him back his attrition, I just lost my best unit. You see, it might not work out, and so you could wind up getting backstabbed in trying to do this. Then again, it could very much work out to your benefit. You may discard an attrition from your deck, okay, and the best unit of his. So, you know, sniveling, lean, dangerously shady Blood Orc with a held dagger concealed at his side. Okay, the Backstabber. Alright, Dignitary Packs we spoke about earlier. I had originally thought that this was a male unit, but it's not. It's a female unit. In thinking about how the Xanthan society is structured, we said that it's female dominant. The ministers of the various areas of activity are all going to be male. But the dignitary is the representative of the Xanthan culture, and so that should be female. All right. So Dignitary Pax travels as a representative of Xanthan interests, generating publicity and gathering support. All right. So the face of the Xanthan population would be female and an elder female. Okay. And so yellow orc older woman with high pope hat and embroidered habit surrounding her face and hanging down. All yellow gold garb with touches of light green. Shirley MacLaine, wry, charismatic, and cunning. Okay, so you know Shirley MacLaine, if you're familiar with her, she has the ability to be kind of all things. She can play kind of a mean character, but with a warm heart. She can play a very warm character overall. Somebody who, is very endearing. She can be very funny. She can be charismatic. She can be sly and cunning looking as well. There's an intelligence there. So this is Dignitary Pack, somebody who's really a good face for the culture because she can be whatever she needs to be in the public eye. All right, but make no mistake, she is very cunning beneath it all. No matter how she may seem on the face of it, underneath it all, she's plotting and scheming, no doubt. Okay, she's no fool. All right. When you recruit a unit from the active field, you may acquire another unit of equal or lesser value in the active field or your basics unit pile. All right. Initially, we had said that you may, I think, purchase another, but no, you're going to just get this one. So you're going to recruit a unit, and then you're going to get another unit of equal or lesser value, whether it be from the active field or if there's nobody else there that you want, you can go and get it from your basic unit pile. You're going to get 2 for the price of 1. All right, and that's because Dignitary Packs is, a charismatic figure who's bringing, gathering support for the Xanthan agenda. Okay, Orc Squatters we also spoke about, +1 com, +1 cunning. Low defense because they're unarmed, basically like Orc civilians who just kind of trailed along behind the war hordes. When you acquire this card, you may immediately use it to fortify a location under your control. We've talked about that already. And now it has the evade, destruction, destroy this card, sabotage, destroy this card. All right. So the only one that you're going to be able to use to evade and not lose this card would be attrition. Okay, because these guys can't, on a destruction or a sabotage, if they get in the way, they're probably going to get whacked because they're not soldiers, they're not warriors, you see. And the idea of the attrition, them being able to get away with that, is because they're not really committed to a cause. You see, they're just there for personal gain, and so anything you try to do to affect their loyalty doesn't really matter because they don't really have any loyalty. All right, so they just kind of circumvent that and just go on with their shady business of trying to steal whatever they can in the midst of this war. Okay, so there's going to be green and red orc vagrants pictured on the card. Okay, so the Xanthan Outcast, we also spoke about him. +1 com, +1 cunning. We gave him a little bit of both here just because, he's like, like I mentioned, kind of think of him almost like a golem character. He's like, a little bit crafty, a little bit nasty, but basically like weak and, on the outskirts of society. You may destroy this card to gain 1 influence. If this unit would be captured, place it on the bottom of its faction deck instead. Okay. Now, this is a little strange. I mean, why anybody would capture this outcast? It has no VP, but they may capture it just to get it away from you so you don't get this influence. If they try to do that, he's going to escape. All right? He's hard to kind of keep, capture because he's just so shady and and people don't think he's a threat, and so maybe they're not paying attention to him and he scurries off. He can get away if he tries to be captured. All right? But they still can remove it from you by capturing it. You see, because it's got this very low defense, too. So, they may want to just throw 2 at it to get it out of your hands, but it's going to go to the bottom of the faction deck instead. We were talking about, whether the faction deck running out would be an end game condition. I think if it were to be an end game condition, it would be only when both faction decks ran out, not when one of them ran out. Because, if one of them ran out, the other faction would be thinking hey, I still got a ways to go here. Why are you killing the game? I could have come back. I could have, I still had some more cards to work out. So, it would be if both of them ran out, because there's no reason why you can't continue to play. You may still have units to purchase from your basic units pile. You still have assaults to make. You're still trying to capture or destroy things from the opponent's row of the active field. I mean, there's plenty to do with the deck that you've built over the course of the game. Plus, you built this great deck over the course of the game. You know how it is. Once you build that great deck, it's fun to play it. So there's no reason not to let this game continue to go on. But we mentioned some of the problems there would be if you just didn't make the game end. You didn't have an end condition that wasn't dependent upon defeating the commander, because someone can choose not to defeat the commander. That's a willing act. There's nothing saying that this game is ever going to end if the players choose not to end it, and we don't want that to happen. We want there to be some way of ending the game, some imposition of a game end on the players. So they have to end the game at some point, and so, maybe I was thinking if both decks run out, you might go another 3 rounds or something like that, but I don't know if that gets convoluted. You'd have to, get some tokens to remember the 3 rounds or something like that, and then I don't know if I want to, add in all this little, minutia on top of this thing. So I think I might just make it if both faction decks run out, if you have to draw a faction card, then the game would end. Because, in effect, you could just leave what's in your active field there, and you wouldn't have to draw a new faction card. Because if there's 4 cards at the end of a turn in the active field, you don't have to put a new card out. There's no space to fill, right? Well, actually, you can only do that 1 turn. After that, if you just left your active field the way it was, it is required that you destroy a card in that row. Because remember, we were trying to kind of get that deck to churn out. We don't want people stalling the deck and not having cards coming out. And so you see, during the end of turn phase, you have refresh if necessary. If no cards were removed from your faction's row of the active field this turn, choose 1 card in that row to be destroyed. Alright, so then 1 card would be destroyed. You would have to replace it. You wouldn't be able to because the faction deck ran out. And so, if that happened to both factions, the game would end. Again, we're still working this stuff out. I mean, we got to play the game before we figure out what's going to happen at the end of it. We got to first get through it. But that's kind of what I'm thinking right now, is that if both of them run out, then we would end the game. Okay, so exile is the greatest shame of Xanth culture. And so this guy, he's experiencing the greatest shame. Okay. So now let's do the Concord Orcs while we're here, because that went pretty quickly. The Concord Orcs, you can see, are balanced completely. Equal common cunning in their cards. Okay. Their strikes are going to be mostly attrition strikes, because again, they're not a faction group, who's focused on destruction. They're a group who's trying to minimize casualties, and so they'd prefer to, work with attrition. And then their evade is going to be to evade destruction for that very same reason. You can see 10 strikes, 10 evades, again, perfectly balanced. And their first faction leader, we already looked at Gravesong last time, but now we have Omira the Eldress. Okay, again, she has a basic unit cost of 3, just like Gravesong, very even. Alright, your faction's row of the active field is increased to 5 cards, and your reserves are increased to 4 cards. Alright, so she's going to give you more options and opportunity. Alright, the assault formation is the Waning Moon. The Waning Moon formation yields the front line into a crescent to absorb an enemy advance and create a more advantageous position from which to respond. If you are the attacker, cancel the opponent's formation ability. If you are the defender, copy it. Alright, so you remember the attacker's formation ability is going to come into play first. So if you're the attacker, you're going to cancel the following formation ability, which is going to come from your opponent. Now, if you're the defender, then your ability isn't going to trigger first, so you can't cancel theirs. Theirs is going to happen. But once it happens, if you're the defender, you're going to get to copy it. All right, so you're kind of yielding to their advance and what they're doing, and then you're going to respond in kind. Okay, that's Omira the Eldress. So you can see a very, kind of, what do I want to say, like a reciprocal kind of way, and a yielding and returning. Kind of like a plant kind of bending with the wind and then coming back. It's this kind of idea, more of like a water strategy, right? So the waning moon, these things are all kind of connected. A kind of a yielding and a giving back, a softer kind of strategy coming from the Eldress. All right, it's that feminine quality, and the wisdom of age, the balance, and the yielding nature of the Concord, all kind of exhibited in this faction leader. All right, Wise-Eyed Judy Zebra. I don't know if you know who Judy Zebra is, okay, but she's somebody who, deals in metaphysical, spiritual matters and stuff like that. She's a channel, but she has a certain way about her that I appreciate, a certain kind of look in her eye that I thought of with Omira the Eldris, a certain kind of wise knowing about the way she looks. And she's going to have white hair, worn loosely up, attractive and strong. Okay. So, War Sage Gravesong we looked at. Now, we changed this a little bit. Now it says, whenever you would destroy an opposing unit, you may capture it instead. Previously, it said that whenever one of your own units would be destroyed, you would, I think, discard it instead. And that just seemed weird to me because you don't have as much control over what somebody else is doing to you. I mean, if they're destroying a unit, your ability to, like, not let them do it is up in the air. It's not guaranteed. And this is like a guarantee. This is something that's going to happen. So that just seems a little weird to have, like, kind of a defensive guaranteed ability. That's just a little bit weird. It kind of reminds me of Ric Flair. If you're into wrestling and you're familiar with Ric Flair's repertoire of maneuvers, one of the things that used to happen with him all the time is when somebody would throw him into a turnbuckle, he would go flying over the turnbuckle and, like, land on the apron. And it was kind of strange because that's something that's happening to him. In other words, how could one of your signature moves be something that happens to you? Like, in other words, this guy who threw him into the turnbuckle, every time he throws somebody else into the turnbuckle, he doesn't go flying over the top. So why, when he throws Ric Flair into the turnbuckle, he goes flying over the top? This wasn't something that he would, like, leap over the top as a counter. He would, like, hit the turnbuckle and go flying over as if he was just, he was thrown by the Hulk. You see, and that kind of became a joke over time, especially after Vince McMahon broke kayfabe, and released to the world the knowledge, which they already had, which is that wrestling isn't an actual competition, but it's all set up. Once that kind of came out and people started thinking about this stuff, it became a joke with Ric Flair that, like, how do you have a defensive signature move, something that happens to you every match? That's kind of, reveals the false nature of the thing, because that wouldn't necessarily happen every time unless you made it happen. And why are you making that happen to yourself? You see what I'm saying? So how do you have a defensive ability that happens every single time? It doesn't make sense. So instead now we have when you would destroy an opposing unit, you may capture it instead. That's really great because it lines up perfectly with who War Sage Gravesong is. He doesn't want to kill. Right? He wants to try and do this and minimize the damage. Okay, he respects life. So you have that opportunity to do that. Instead of destroying the unit, you may capture instead. In addition, how wonderful is that? Because now you get the VP. All right, so any cards you get that are going to allow you to destroy a unit, and those cards may come from anywhere, because remember, in a team game especially, you're going to be working with your other faction groups' cards as well, because they're going to be coming out in the active field and you can purchase them. So you might be with the Blood Orcs, and you have a lot of destruction ability. And then you might want to choose War Sage Gravesong, because he's going to allow you to make a lot of captures, you see? And so this really plays into who he is and makes a lot more sense overall. All right? And the assault formation is the Lion's Mane. You may discard the first unit from either of your ranks and the last unit from either of your ranks to discard 2 units that are in the center of one or both of your opponent's ranks. Okay? That just sounds like a bunch of, like, legalese or something, But very simple. You could discard a first and last unit from your ranks. Doesn't matter if it's the same rank or one from either rank. You know what I'm saying? However you want to do it. 1 first and 1 last unit. And then you can get 2 from the center of your opponent. Doesn't matter from where, either or both, it's fine. All right, and now if you remember, we had formation ability on one of the champions faction leaders that protected your center ranks. So that would be something to consider when you're choosing faction leaders, that matchup. Okay, and so the Lion's Mane formation surrounds the enemy on all sides and closes in upon the center. All right. So this idea of surrounding and you're losing units on the edges while you're crushing in upon their center. All right, and they're losing units from the center. All right, the stout, strong, humbly and naturally dressed, wise and weathered green orc War Sage Gravesong. you know, one of kind of the flagship characters of the game. You know, I think that he offers a lot in terms of lore, in terms of you know, what he represents, because he complicates the conflict a little bit. It's not just good versus evil. Warsage Gravesong is a likable character, a sympathetic character. You know, he doesn't want, you know, this to be a bloodbath, and you know, so it makes it a little bit more of a gray area as opposed to just being black and white. Okay, all right, and so we'll see this throughout in their equipment and their other things, how it works. All right, we have the Horned Barricade. Units in the same row as this card cannot be captured. That's a global ability that's going to be in play while this is in the active field. When this card is purchased, it is destroyed. All right, nobody's getting through this. That's the Concord Convoy who set up this Horned Barricade. All right, so the Horned Barricade is going to come out into the active field, and it's intended to sit out there and have this effect. If you want to get rid of it, you can get rid of it by paying 1 cunning and just remove it on your own, and if you do so, it's going to be destroyed. And if the opponent wants to get rid of it, they're going to have to pay 6 to get in there and dismantle this thing. So this is going to be protecting your units from being captured. All right, so this works out very well with what the Concord are all about. Now, there's only 2 of these in the deck potentially. Okay, so I mean, well, all right, it'll be in the deck, but potentially available to you throughout the game. So there's not a lot of them, but when they come out, they can potentially stay out unless the opponent wants to pay this 6 to remove it. So, in effect, paying 6 for this is not paying 6 for something else. The opportunity cost there is another unit that you would have been able to capture. So, in any case, this is protecting somebody in that regard at the least. But if they leave it out, it's going to kind of make it so they can't capture anybody, you know, until they deal with this thing. All right, and that could give you a few turns of, you know, maybe getting some units that would have gotten taken away from you. Okay, and the VP is 0, so if you can't own this card, so because when it's purchased it's destroyed, so you know there's no way of having it. But if for some reason some effect or something, you know, allowed you to get equipment from the destroyed pile or something like that, this isn't going to do anything for you. Its intent is to operate in the active field. Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm just thinking about that. If there was something that allowed you to get equipment from the destroyed pile and you got this, then you put it into your hand and you tried to play it, it wouldn't do anything, because if you played it, it says units in the same row as this card cannot be captured. It's not in a row if it's in your play area, and then there's nothing doing with it. So if you did do that, it wouldn't break anything, because you would just be not playing well, because you'd be using a card that doesn't do anything. All right, so you wouldn't want to target this from the destroyed pile. I mean, unless there was like an ability that when you took equipment from the destroyed pile, you got something, but then you'd be paying the price in a dead card for it. So it's fine the way it is. A makeshift fence covered in sharp thorns, just to kind of stop people from coming through. All right, and now we have Broadshade Sword of Timber, which we spoke about. This is the artifact now of the Concord. Okay, and it's 8. All right, double the combat of the attached unit. Plain and simple. Broadshade is said to have been crafted by the primordial Concord warrior while in a desperate fight for survival in the wilderness. A wooden broadsword with gold reinforced shaft up the center and on the blades, and a gold leaf etching hilt. Okay, so it's like this wooden sword that he created to fight his way out of a desperate situation in the wild, using what he had available to him. And then, we didn't get into who this is and everything, but this is like a mythological figure of the Concord. And so then, once he comes back with his heroic tale, then through the years they've crafted this to be a more, a more serviceable sword in modern day combat by putting on, metal edgings and whatnot. Okay, and so it's used. It's being used. It's not something that's going to sit in a museum somewhere. It's, it's core to the Concord culture, and so somebody's going to wield this thing. It's going to continue the fight of Concord survival, in other words. It's going to be in the fight for Concord survival going forward. All right. And now Quillhide Armor. The attached unit gains +1 combat. You may attach this armor to a captain If the attached captain is captured, the opponent destroys one unit played that phase. What? No hug? From Skylar Graves' song. Okay, you're wearing a quill hide armor with all these little spikes sticking out of it. Long, bristling, grayish-brown spikes emerging from a shoulder girdle. Okay, so it's something that when you come into attack, you get hurt. Alright, so you can put this on a captain, and if they're captured, the opponent's going to have to destroy one of the units they use to capture them. Okay, and there's 3 of these. So getting some protection for your captains here. Okay, again, there's a lot, you can see there's a lot going on in terms of protecting your units. Alright, that's a focus of the Concord. And now the prisoner exchange, we spoke about this as well. +2 cunning. You may place a card from your captured pile into the active field, then choose a card from your opponent's captured pile with an equal or lower cost value and place it into the active field. Alright, previously we said that you were going to get a card from their captured pile and put it into your deck. They were going to get one from yours and put it into the active field. And that was going to give you a little bit of an advantage. Since this is one of your tactics, you would presumably get an advantage in that. But because that wasn't even, I felt it didn't thematically, represent the Concord, who are fair and balanced. And then, like they want a balanced exchange in this thing. But also, to make this something that has its associated cost. I mean, some consider the diplomacy of the Concord Orcs to be a point of honor. Others a point of weakness. You see, there'd be no point of weakness if you were going to get the edge in this negotiation. You see, I wanted to represent to the player the experience of being in the Concord position. If you're playing as them, I want you to feel like you're them, And so this is the kind of decisions that they have to make. These are because of their morality and their adherence to moral principles, they have a cost associated with that. I mean, if it was always advantageous to be moral, we'd have no issue in the world, right? There's an advantage to being immoral, short-sighted, apparent advantage in any case. I mean, if you bang somebody over the head and take their wallet, there's the apparent advantage of I'm going to get money from this. That's the only reason why anybody ever does anything immoral, is because there's some benefit to it. So the fact that there's a benefit doesn't excuse the behavior. There's always a benefit, that's why people do it. You're giving something up by being moral, although if you truly understand the nature of morality, you understand that there's a broader, more long view benefit to that. All right, and so the prisoner exchange has that inherent short-term cost. All right, and looking at more of a broader view of getting back one of your units and they get back one of theirs. Okay, so you're faced with that choice. All right, and all the consequences of that. All right, tentative exchange of prisoners and bindings accompanied by guards, green orcs, and men. And then we have the rituals, which we've also looked at. The ancestral link gives you +2 cunning right off the bat. Choose a unit of your faction in the destroyed pile, play it, then return it to the destroyed pile at the end of your action phase. So you're going to be, ancestral link, somebody who's passed on, who's crossed over to the other side, right? Somebody who's been defeated is now going to have this action. And so you're making that link and tapping into their ability, you see? So you're getting to play that card once. Veiled, though not forgotten. Ascended, though not departed. Entwine below, as above, and share this mortal clay. Alright, that's the Concord ritual incantation that's used for the ancestral link. And so what it's saying, entwine below as above, below being the mortal realm, above being the spiritual realm, and share this mortal clay. In other words, this isn't a ghost who's going to come in and do something. This is presumably one of the Concord who's going to take on the aspect of this ancestor or this fallen comrade, okay? And so, veiled though not forgotten. You can't see them anymore, they're not here in the physical, but they're not gone, right? They're not forgotten. We remember you and we're addressing you now with this ritual. Ascended though not departed, all right? So you've moved on, but you're not gone. And we're going to channel you through us and bring your ability to affect the world into play. Okay, so that's the ancestral link. Okay, Concord Shaman performing ritual, looking up to the sky with eyes closed, hands out with flaming mounds in upturned palms. So maybe mounds of some kind of substance that are on fire in his hands as he's looking up. Alright, and then we have the Sanctity of the Sacrifice. Again, you're going to get +2 cunning on all these rituals. Destroy 1 beast unit played this phase, or in your faction's row of the active field. Gain combat or cunning equal to its cost value. Alright, and we know that costs can be pretty high. I mean, they can be, 5, 6, 7 or so. Previously we allowed you to do this to a beast anywhere, including your opponent's row of the active field. And I changed that because, again, we want to think of the active field as those things that are kind of more readily available to the person whose row it is. If you're playing for that faction, those are the things that are close to you and available to you. That's why if we're going to go in and we're going to break one of your equipment and destroy it, we have to use combat. We have to fight our way in to do that, you see? And so, we didn't want to make this, you do a ritual and you can just kill something that's theirs in effect, kill something that's on their side of the thing. This is something you're doing. You have to take the thing, you have to lay it out on an altar, you have to make the sacrifice. So you need access to it. Alright, and we didn't want this to give you access to it. This is something you do once you already have access. So destroy 1 beast unit played this phase, or in your faction's row of the active field. I mean, we can... We're going to say, instead of played this phase, we're going to say destroy 1 beast unit in your hand, play area, or in your faction's row of the active field. So it's all those things that are available to you. You can do it from your hand because, presumably you'd want to play it first so you can get its combat or cunning and its abilities, and then make the sacrifice. That's probably what you're going to want to do. But if for some reason you don't want to play that card, you don't want its effect, maybe it's going to screw up something you had in mind or whatever, I don't know, whatever it is, we don't want to force you to. There's no reason to. Again, we've spoken about this before. Always giving the player choice unless there's a concrete, compelling reason not to. There's no compelling reason here not to. There's no reason why you need to play the card first. If it's in your hand, you want to do it, go ahead. Alright, so destroy 1 unit in your hand, the play area, the cards that you've played already this turn, or in your faction's row of the active field, things you have access to. Alright, that's how you're going to be able to do this, and then you're going to gain calm and or cunning equal to its cost. Alright, so this would represent in any combination. So if it was a 5 cost card, you could do 2 combat, 3 cunning, you could do 5 cunning, you could do whatever you want with it. Alright, release your essence onto freedom, honored by our unity. The giver and receiver are one. Alright, that's the sanctity of the sacrifice, acknowledging that, acknowledging the equality, acknowledging the divinity in the other. You see, so release your essence onto freedom because we are sacrificing you, but you're honored by our unity. This isn't something that you're being victimized about. We're one. We're doing this to ourselves. In other words, and I mean, this may sound convenient to the, from the perspective of the person who's doing it. You may look at this and say, well, how convenient. Yeah, we're both one, but I'm getting killed and put on an altar, and you're gaining some kind of benefit from it. All right, well, hey, that's the argument, that you make against these kind of beliefs. But the belief here is that we are one. We're doing this to ourselves. So we're doing this for some necessary benefit. Again, like we spoke about, like the Native Americans who had to kill, to hunt and eat, and to get, fur to put on as clothing, and to get bones to make things or whatever they're going to do. All right, we have to do this, but we acknowledge that this isn't something we're just doing carelessly or rashly. We understand what's happening here. We feel it. We're part of it. We recognize our unity and our oneness, and we're still doing this thing. It's not something that we're just doing callously. And so the giver and receiver are one. All right. So it's being thought of as a way of sacrificing unto yourself in a way. All right. Concord War Sage with a Whitwolf upon a makeshift altar. One hand touching the beast, the other making a gesture at the forehead. Okay, so we're going to just bring in the Whitwolf here just to kind of tie this all in to the lore of this game. Alright, and now let's take a look at their basic units. The Concord Soothsayer, +2 cunning. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck. Each may be placed on the top or bottom of your deck in any order. So look at the top 3 cards, do what you want with them. Set up your next turn. You want to focus more towards combat, more towards cunning. You want to put an attrition at the bottom of the deck, however you want to work it. Assault, draw a card. Okay, so if you're using the Concord Soothsayer in Assault, which you may want to do to get at his cunning, he can fortify. Alright, when you put him down, you're going to get another card. All right, and that's going to help you, you know, increase your totals, presumably. I have told you what I have seen, but you must decide what to do about it. That's the Concord Soothsayer. All right, the voodooish prayer man. All right, and the Concord Convoy. Okay, this is kind of an usher, an escort. +1 combat, +1 cunning, sort of a ranger type. You may discard this card to place a unit from your discard pile into your hand. All right, so if you don't want to do this, you can discard him to get a unit that would better serve your purposes this turn. He's, again, ushering, escorting someone to you through the wilderness. Has the assault ability. You may discard this card to place a unit from your discard pile into your hand. Okay, so the same idea, but he can do this during an assault, which would be key. See, now here's where he would really shine. All right, because during an assault, you can keep him in your reserves. You can put him out to fortify, and he's going to give you access to anything in your discard pile at the time of the assault. You know, and you can time that assault to make sure your discard pile isn't going to wind up getting shuffled into your deck anytime soon. You know, because you know it's going to be 2 turns, so you can kind of judge. All right, I'm going to launch this assault now. My discard pile is going to be pretty full when we resolve this thing, and then the Concord Convoy will be able to get me one of my really good units for the assault. Because again, that's the struggle in an assault, is trying to get units, because you're going to have the 3 units from your reserves if you're attacking. You're going to have the, you know, anywhere from 2 to 5 units fortifying if you're defending. But your bulk of your cards are going to be the ones that are in your hand that turn. So you want to be able to manipulate that any way you can. All right, so switching him out for another card, getting you a unit that can be used, because you can't use tactics and equipment. They're going to be useless to you. In addition, elementals are going to be useless. And so we want to make sure that, you know, you're able to get cards. All right, so watch your step. I don't want to have to peel you off a skewer. All right, that's the Concord Tracker. I think we were calling him the Tracker initially, but we're going to call him the Convoy. All right, so again, referring to that skewer trap that we saw with the men. All right, he's aware of these kind of traps being out in the wilderness because he's a ranger, he's an escort, he knows the dangers, and he's going to help you avoid them. So he's telling you to watch your step in this particular area because there may be skewer traps. Okay, so again, referencing back to the game, trying to bring that lore out any way we can. Outback Tracker Orc with reddish beard and hair. All right, kind of a homage to one of my favorite G.I. Joes. I'd say probably my favorite, which was Outback. All right, and so referencing him with this reddish beard. Okay, now the Soberhold Sentinel. 4 of these, so these are going to be the most prolific basic units in the Concord Orc faction group. 2 combat and 1 cunning. Alright, defense of 6. Very high defense if for some reason he winds up out in the active field, or if some cards of the opponent references his defense. He can fortify, and he has an evade ability. Attrition, return this card to your hand. Sabotage, return this card to your hand. The only one that he's not going to be able to do this with is destruction. Alright, the Sentinels of Soberhold are not only defenders of the Citadel, but are the honored protectors of the Concord in every capacity. Alright, and that's why they're with us here. Even though they're guards in their home, they're being brought with them. Anywhere you go, their oath is to protect. Alright, so they're coming along to protect in every capacity, no matter what's going on. Alright, and the armored Concord Orc holding a Soberhold Bulwark. Alright, which you remember is a piece of equipment. Alright, so, yeah, and we'll see that. But, let me see. This is the units. Okay, okay, yeah, did we skip over this just now? The Soberhold Bulwark? Yeah, we skipped over it, although we had looked at it previously. How did we miss this? Okay, so yeah, this piece of equipment, the attached unit's combat is equal to this card's defense, which is 5. Now, the reason why I didn't just say 5 is because maybe somewhere you'd have an ability that would allow you to increase the defense of an equipment card, or I don't know, but I'm leaving that open. You know, I'm always thinking of the future. We said that there's going to be 3 Recitals of Redimere games at least, and each one of them presumably is going to have like kind of a standalone expansion. So it's kind of like 6 games. So we don't know where this thing's going to wind up going. I mean, that's the plans for right now. We want to leave it open. We want to leave, you know, everything kind of tied up, thinking about future abilities and stuff that may screw things up. So we're saying it's equal to this card's defense. If you have something that can increase this card's defense, then that's going to be great. If the opponent has something that reduces the defense of equipment for some reason, then that's going to apply. We want to make sure that this doesn't skirt around that. And so this unit's combat is equal to this card's defense, which will usually be an increase at 5 because we don't have any +5 combat units, I don't believe. Okay, so that would be a benefit. And then evade destruction, return this card to your hand. Alright, so here you see where the Soberhold Sentinel does not have a destruction evade ability because the destruction evade capacity is in the shield, you see? So we kind of split it between the two. We also didn't want the Soberhold Bulwark to be exactly like the card that we saw previously. I think it was in the Dwarf faction, which had all 3. I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't have all 3. I mean, these are defenders, but I just chose to make sure that this card was different, and so it just has these 2, but not the destruction. If you destroy, then this is going to get discarded. It's going to kind of expend its defense ability. It's not going to be able to kind of withstand that. All right. I mean, these guys are pretty general. I mean, they're good defenders, but they're pretty general. They're not like the most elite defenders in the world, but they are pretty good, you know, I mean, as far as Concord go. Alright, so now we'll get into the faction deck units. The Concord Fighting Orc. This is just like a general, you know, warrior. Alright, serving as a non-centralized militia, the Concord Fighting Orcs are those who have volunteered to take up arms in any time of need. Alright, so just like a general warrior. 2 combat, 1 cunning, can fortify and has the strike ability. Attrition, the opponent reveals a unit of cost 5 or more from their hand or acquires an attrition. Alright, and that's because we're painting these guys as like a militia, we're painting these guys as like a general unit, not some kind of, you know, incredible warrior of legend. There's 5 of them. These are like the regular fighting orcs. And so if you could reveal a unit of cost 5 or more, then you can avoid this, okay? You can avoid the attrition because your guy is going to be stronger than him. This should probably be 6 or more. I wanted it to have, you know, more applicability with the 5, but if they're even, then how are you getting away with this? Well, typically in a match, you always say the defender gets the edge in a tie. So maybe that's kind of what I was thinking. Do you think we can do that? Leave it at 5? Does that make sense? If you're matched, yeah. If you're matched, then he doesn't get over on you. If you're more, he doesn't get over on you. But if you're less, he does. All right. Now we're doing this based on cost, not based on combat. But cost generally reflects the ability of the unit. You know, the better the unit is, the higher his cost is going to be. And so we're basing it on cost because, you know, even if you're a very strong cunning unit, we want you to be able to kind of get away from the fighting orc. All right. Generic Concord Orc with a mace and sheathed dagger. Alright, and now the Concord Orc War Sage, a magic unit. It's got the reverse, +1 combat and +2 cunning. Alright, high defense of 6 because it's a War Sage. This is a magic unit who's supposed to get out there in battle, so he's prepared. Alright, and has a strike. Attrition. The opponent acquires an attrition. If this strike is evaded, gain 1 influence. Alright, so the War Sage is able to do something even if this is evaded. You're going to get some benefit making this strike no matter what, which means you're probably going to play him for a strike unless you really need the cunning. What happened here? Why are these men twisted into knots and smiling about it? Keslin Deslow, alright, so you're going to see, you know, bust of War Sage in the foreground walking towards us with a smirk, holding the Amulet of Echoes. A group of men twisted upon the floor smiling. Alright, so the implication here is that he put some kind of strange spell on these guys that made them all kind of contort and twist up into knots, like kind of like every muscle in your body was cramping. But then he kind of shut off their pain sensors and gave them like a bliss spell, you know, like where they're just like happy, like you know, like a dead smile, like maybe you know, the smiling Titan from Attack on Titan. You know, it's just like this dopey dead smile on this guy who's twisted up in knots. Like they're just completely out of commission, physically, mentally, they're gone. You try and say something to them, they're just like, you know, they don't know what's going on. All right. So that's the capability of the Concord Orc War Sage in battle. And so he's walking away smirking, and he got the Amulet of Echoes. You know, so it's like he went in to get this thing, and that's how he went about it. And again, disabling. It's not a, you don't walk over and there's a bloodbath and you say, hey, what happened here? The Concord are going to find their way of doing things, presumably without hurting anybody. And here, he's not only not killing anybody, he's literally not hurting anybody. He shut off their pain. They're smiling about it. You know, so they like, you know, and that's the best way to go about it from the Concord perspective, all right? And that's what the War Sage does out there. It comes up with other ways, okay? And now we have Growler, liaison to the Pride. And you'll see this Pride idea as we go forward. Cost of 9. But look at this, 3 combat, 4 cunning. Has an ability and a strike. Alright, so he's really strong, unique, notorious unit for the Concord. Alright, Growler. If a lion is in the active field, this unit cannot be captured. That's the global ability that will be in play if he's out in the active field. Alright, because we're going to see some lion units. And so he's the handler of them. Growler's insight into the ways of the Pride is innate, which is evident to anyone who's had the unfortunate experience of being seated next to him during a meal, okay, or near him during a meal, all right? So he eats like an animal, all right? He's like an animal. He's one of these guys who's always working with the lions of the Pride, and he kind of adopts their ways, okay? His strike is a sabotage strike. Reveal all lions in your hand. For each lion in your hand and play area, the opponent discards a random card from their hand. Alright, so when lions are around, this guy's going to get, you know, some kind of support. Whether it be out in the active field, they'll protect him. In your hand, if you're playing them during the strike, they're going to discard random cards. So now this kind of lines up well on this particular unit, because this is a unit you really don't want to discard for its strike ability. Because remember, we said it's either or. If you play it for its strike, you discard it. You don't get any of this. So you're presumably always going to want to use him on your turn, but because this is so circumstantial, you know, that reveal all lions in you. If you don't have any lions or you only have one, it may not be worth it to you. But if you do wind up with a hand of like, you know, 2 or 3 lions in it, then you might be willing to give this up this turn to get at this, you know, this strike on your opponent where they're going to discard cards. You might get them to discard 3 random cards from their hand or kill their next turn. You know, so this makes a lot of sense considering who it's on, that this is so circumstantial and dependent on the situation. Okay, scrawny, brutish, and unkept orc with scraggly mane-like hair and beard. So again, kind of taking on the look of a lion as well. He's just, you know, he's really kind of assimilated into their ways. Alright, and now we have a lion unit here, 2 of them in fact. The offspring of the Pride, there's going to be 2 of them. These are 3 small but fierce lion cubs, pictured on the card. 1 combat, they're little. 3 defense, right? But they can fortify. They cannot have attachments because they're beasts. But they have the lion synergy. So they're going to get +1 combat for each other lion played this phase. That's before or after this card is played. They're going to get this bump up, being in groups, okay? They have an evade, destruction. Return another lion unit from your discard pile to your hand. Okay, so the evade, destruction, if you're trying to destroy lions, right, or whoever, other lions are going to come out, you know, they're mad about it, you know, they're going to come out in defense of it. Alright, so that's the idea behind the offspring of the Pride. If you try and make a strike, they're going to evade it and bring out, you know, presumably bigger or other lions from your discard pile. Alright, and this will be good too because it's an evade, which means you're going to discard this card to evade the strike, but then you're going to potentially get another card back. Alright. Quit your crying, it's only a finger. They've got to learn somehow. That's Growler, the liaison to the Pride, okay? So he's making excuses for the cubs who are eating people's shoes and biting off their fingers and God knows what they're doing, these little lion babies, you know, and, you know, he's defending them, saying, hey, you know, he cares more about them than he does about you. In all cases, he's about the lions, right? So, okay. And now we have the Warrior of the Pride. There's 3 of these. 7, okay? 2 VP. Good strong unit. 3 combat, 2 cunning, can fortify, 8 defense, alright? Cannot have attachments, of course, has the lion synergy, and then also has this assault ability. Choose a beast in either of your opponent's ranks to be destroyed. So if they have wit wolves, or who knows what faction you're going against, if they have beasts associated with them. Also, as we go forward into the expansion, the Ferran dwarves are going to have the ability to shapeshift into a beast form. When they're in that form, they will be considered a beast. Alright, and you would be able to target them. And now, you know, like again, I know it's hard to understand all of this just talking about it, but just so you understand, you might wonder, well, if a Ferren has the ability to change into a beast, that would be an ability on its card. If you're playing it during an assault, the abilities don't count. So how would you know if it's a beast or not when you put it in an assault? The way that mechanism is going to work is that there's going to be a side deck. So when you purchase a certain Ferren unit, its beast mode is going to come into your side deck. Okay, it's going to be like out of the game, and then you're going to get that card as well for your side deck. And when he does his ability to change, you're going to switch that card out. So then his dwarf mode is going to go into the side deck, and his beast mode is going to come out. So you're only going to have one or the other at any given time. So there's not going to be any confusion about what it is. He's either a beast or he's a dwarf, depending on which card is representing him at the time. All right, so you could potentially have the beast in an assault, and you probably would, because the beasts are probably going to be more powerful than the dwarves in most cases. And so this would be able to target that. Okay, so again, the Warrior of the Pride is like a predatorial animal who's going to be able to take down other beasts quite readily. The Lion Pride of the Concord are fierce and steadfast. They are loyal to their orc allies, though never subservient. So this is a reciprocal relationship. Again, respect for nature with the Concord, as well as all life, right? And so this is a reciprocal relationship. They're there voluntarily. They're not pets. They're not on chains. They're there as allies. All right, and this is a large female lioness, the Warrior of the Pride. And now we're into the captains. The Concord captains: Celestia Starlight, defense 12, arrival. All opposing non-notorious units in the active field are captured. Okay, so your big units, your notorious units, they're going to be protected here because they're going to be able to stand up against Celestia, but every other kind of unit is going to get captured. This could be huge if she comes out and there's 3 or 4 units out in the active field. I mean, that could swing it quite a bit in terms of the VP at the end of the game. Let's just take a look at her quickly. The tall, slim orc female, long, sleek black hair, ribboned in white, blue garb with twinkling sparkles, levitating, gliding forward in an upright position with arms outstretched to either side with palms up. A calm smile expression. So a really highly magical unit. Known by the Concord as the Wonder Weaver, Celestia's presence captivates enemies and allies alike, often rendering them incapacitated. Okay, so she comes out and it's a wonder, right? And that's why we're able to capture these units so readily. They're just putty in your hands, right, when she comes out. All right, each turn, the first time an opponent evades a strike this turn, you gain 1 influence. All right, so that's going to be limiting their ability to resist. All right, that's what we're seeing with her. Activate, draw 2 cards. Each opponent reveals an evade card or gains an attrition. Alright, so again, big effects on these activates. You're going to get 2 cards right off the bat, and then in addition, each opponent's going to have to reveal an evade card or they're going to gain an attrition. Alright, because again, this is limiting their ability to perform out in the field. When she comes out, there's going to be guys who are incapacitated, who are in effect no longer part of your army. Temporarily. And so if you can reveal an evade card, you can get around this, but otherwise you're going to gain this attrition. Alright. Okay, and the VP5 for the 12 defense. And now we have Murmur, the Pride King. Chief amongst the Concord Pride, the low rumbling growl of the Pride King is enough to command both cat and orc alike. Alright, large fierce male lion roaring. Alright, the Pride King, defense 14. Okay, that's big. Arrival effect, each opponent reveals their hand and places a unit from their hand into the active field. Alright, so basically, guys are going to run away. Alright, they were going to come out and do something for you, now they're not so sure because Murmur's out there. They don't want to get involved in that. Alright. Turn ability, opposing units and captains cost 1 less to capture this phase. Again, that fear effect from Murmur. The distraction of him being out there, perhaps. And activate. Search your deck and discard pile for lion units, reveal them, and place them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So we're getting some deck searching here, as well as your discard pile. Any lions you own are going to come into your hand. Now, you might have lions in your hand already, so that they're there already, and all the other ones are going to come. So any you've gotten, you're going to get. Okay? And he's VP6 because it is 14 defense. Alright, now we have Gosser the Paleborn. Let's look at Gosser. Born of a mother from the Ghoulshade clan, Gosser is a ghastly figure with an exceedingly bizarre demeanor. He inspires disquiet in most, and much of his time is spent tinkering with equipment in solitude. Alright, so remember the Ghoulshade are pale white orcs. I mean, like, they have like a pale, almost translucent skin. They're very creepy looking. They have like icy, pale eyes. They're involved in a lot of like necromancy and strange stuff. All right, so they're you know, really weird. And him being born of a mother from the Ghoulshade clan, though presumably a father of the Concord, he's gonna take on some of these characteristics. Not so much so that he can't be part of the Concord faction, but enough so that most people kind of just avoid him if they can. All right. And so an albino orc with very pale green skin and very light green eyes, lean athletic build, long white straggly hair, bony face, war paint, fur embellishments, lots of straps with equipments and weapons. All right, because we said he tinkers with equipment a lot. All right, so his arrival ability. Place all opposing units in the active field on top of their faction deck in any order. All right, so all the units in the active field, they're not going to be like captured or anything like that, but they are going to try and get away from this guy, and they're going to go back on top of the faction deck. All right, he's just somebody who you're just repulsive in a sense. You just want to avoid him. As soon as he's coming, you say, I don't know, I don't want any part of this guy. Even though he's fine, he's not. There's nothing bad about him. He doesn't do bad things to anybody. It's just how he looks and how he is by being part Ghoulshade. And I imagine him as like kind of a quiet, strange guy, but not unwilling. I mean, if someone wants to come over and talk to him or whatever, he'll talk. He'll, you know, whatever. But it's just he's weird and he's strange, and people avoid him for that reason. All right, turn ability. You may place an equipment card from your discard pile on top of your deck. Okay, so again, tinkering with equipment and maybe bringing it back into the fold, maybe repairing it or whatever from your discard pile to your deck, and then activate. You may flip another captain in the battlefield face down or face up. Face down captains have no effects and cannot be captured. If Gosser is captured, turn all face down captains face up. Now we need to have this here because, you know, he's the one who's doing this thing. It's, again, this idea of kind of turning away from him. All right. You may flip another captain in the battlefield face down. All right. So when he's face down, he's not going to have any of his abilities available. If you're doing this to an opponent or your own, he's going to be defunct. Okay. But he also can't be captured. So that means you may want to do this to your own or to the opponents, depending on the situation. You may want to protect one of your own captains by turning them face down, buy you more time. Otherwise, you may want to do it to one of your opponents to get rid of a very troublesome ability temporarily. And the only way to reverse this is either by using his activate ability again, where you can do it, or if the opponent wants to do it, he's got to capture Gosser. Right? And there's nothing particular that's going to protect Gosser other than things that protect captains in general. But he will be available to capture, and so they're going to have to target him, get rid of him to turn everybody face up again. All right, and then either make your other captains available for capture or make their captains available for abilities and what have you, okay? All right, and defense 12, VP 5. Now we have Rackjaw. Rackjaw is kind of a heroic green orc, like like Fabio, you know? Very tall, muscular, handsome Fabio type hero with sleek, long black hair, spot beard. I mean, like, you know, like a spit, you know, like a little thing under the mouth. Earrings, carrying a large greatsword. All right. So he strode upon the battlefield with steed-like majesty, and though it was their charge to fell him, the hesitation of the men betrayed their admiration. An excerpt from Dawn of Thunder by Artemis Harrow. He's just the classic, like, hero figure. He's, like, built in a long, flowing hair and, you know, the strong jaw. And he comes out and then, like, light shines. Like, you know, when he comes out, right? So he comes out and even the enemy is looking at him like, wow, this guy is amazing. You know, it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime. You know, when he used to come out in a bodybuilding environment or even on, you know, a movie set, it was like, wow, look at this guy, you know? And so that's what we got with him. All right, the strong guy, defense 13. When he arrives, each opponent loses 1 influence, and each player of this captain's faction gains 1 influence. Okay, so the bolstering quality of having him on your side, and the morale diminishing quality of him being, you know, on the opponent's side. Okay, so there's an intimidation factor there with this guy because he's so glorious, you know. So turn ability, discard a card to gain +3 combat or cunning this phase. And or cunning, any combination. All right, discard a card to gain this this extra combat or cunning. Alright, and this is kind of like saying, again, because he's the hero guy, you know, it's kind of like, get rid of something else and let him do it, is kind of the thing. Like, you move to the side and he comes in and gives you this extra combat and cunning. Alright? And mechanically speaking, it's just, it's having you pay a cost for this because it's happening every turn. I may want to qualify this. Maybe make it a non-elemental. Again, this would be one of those things that you want to like kind of flag for review and playtesting just to see how it plays out. But if you could discard a card every single turn and get +3, I mean, that's a pretty steady, you know, advantage that's going to be going on. You're always discarding an elemental. You know, remember, these turn abilities are happening at the beginning of your turn. So you would be able to discard an attrition before it had its effect, which I don't necessarily have a problem with because, again, discarding attrition in the presence of Rackjaw makes sense. He's inspirational. You know, when he comes out, if you were going to go home because this thing didn't look like it was going so good, and then Rackjaw shows up, you say, hey, maybe I'll stick around because behind him we could do anything, right? So maybe that's okay the way it is. I'm going to leave it for that reason because I want it to be able to avoid attrition while he's out. Of course, once he leaves, he gets captured, then those attritions are still going to be in effect. They don't get destroyed. They just lose their ability while he's out, which makes sense because he's bolstering everybody's morale. So I like that enough to keep this. Our choices would be to reduce this 3 if it's too strong, or to make it you have to discard a non-elemental, in which case the attrition would remain. I think I'd probably lean more towards reducing this down to 2, seeing how that goes, and 1 if we had to. We'll see. It should be okay. Let's see how it plays out. And then his activate ability. Choose a unit in an opponent's captured pile. You may purchase that unit by paying its cost. Alright, so you basically can just buy back a unit from the captured pile. Alright, so again, kind of, you would imagine that his nemesis on the battlefield would be Calgrim, the Mindbreaker, who he described as Conan, right? So these two guys, it would be an epic matchup, you know. This is something people be talking about over a brew. Right, you know, hey, if it was Rackjaw versus Calgrim, who would win, you know, and everybody can make a compelling argument in that regard. So Calgrim, the Mindbreaker, allowed you to get people back from the captured pile. We're going to allow Rackjaw to do that with his activate ability, but you do have to purchase them back. This isn't a rescue. You have to purchase them back by paying their cost. Okay. All right, and the VP6 because of that 13 defense, and then finally we have Skyla Gravesong. The granddaughter of Warsage Gravesong, Skyla is a cunning and stealthy hunter, as well as an accomplished saboteur. Okay, shoulder-length black hair sweeping upward at the bottom, like a little flip at the bottom, right? Young, strong, attractive face, dark lips, slightly athletic build, nothing too crazy though. She's kind of got an achievable look about her, something that I think that anybody could relate to. I want her to be like an inspiration, almost like a, you know, Katniss from the Hunger Games kind of thing, where people can relate to her. She's not so out there where she, you know, like Wyvern, who's just this incredible warrior. You know, we're like, oh god, all right, I don't know. You know, she's just one of a kind. You know, Skyla's more achievable. It's more, you know, admirable that, you know, she can do what she can do because she's regular. You know what I'm saying? A little Tomb Raidery, relatable, accessible. Okay, so you know, that's kind of the idea I have for Skyla. Excuse me. The arrival effect, if Murmur the Pride King is in the battlefield, this captain cannot be captured. So Murmur is going to protect her. And again, Murmur the Pride King, Warsage Gravesong, the top Concord Orc. You know, so there's going to be an association between the two top, you know, guys, right? And so growing up, Skyla had Murmur around and he took to, you know, protecting her. You know, he loves her, she loves him, she takes care of him, and he takes care of her, and they have this relationship, okay? So he's going to protect her if she's out in the battlefield. You're not going to be able to capture her. If there is a turn ability, if there is only one opposing unit in the active field, you may capture it without paying its cost. That can get pretty strong too. We got to take a look at that when we play, because again, it's happening every single turn until she's removed, and she's hard to remove because of the Pride King may be out, or may come out after she comes out. The idea here is that she's cunning and stealthy hunter, right? So she can, if there's only one guy out there, he's by himself, she can get in there and capture him, you know, just stealthily. So she don't have to pay the cost or anything, she just sneak up and get him. Activate, reveal the top 3 cards of an opponent's deck, destroy one, discard one, and return one to the top of the deck. So you've seen this kind of ability in other games. It's just kind of you're faced with that choice of what to do with the cards you find. Sometimes that's hard because they're all good cards. You don't want to give them one back. Sometimes they're all bad cards. You wish you can get rid of them all. I mean, you wish you could make them keep them all. You know, stuff like that. So, but you are going to get to destroy one, discard one, and then you have to give one back. So you have to decide which one that's going to be. So I always like this kind of thing because it presents the player with, you know, a strategic choice. Okay, and that's it for the Concord Orcs. Okay, so we had a nice run with them. I really like the faction group. I think that their cards represent what they're about pretty well. I like them. I mean, again, Warsage Gravesong just has that quality, that likability, that respect, and that carries over to the entire faction. Okay, so this would be for the, you know, since this game requires that there be an Orc player and a Champions player, sometimes, you know, like, I have a buddy of mine who I play games with on very rare occasions, but he always likes to be the good guy, you know, and I kind of like to be the good guy too. I mean, I don't mind, I'll do anything, but, you know what I'm saying? So if you have 2 players who both like to be the good guys, here's an Orc faction you can choose where you don't have to kind of adopt the role of the villain. You know, there's a fair case to be made for the Concord, okay? So next time we'll be back to take a look at the Xanth. Thanks for checking in. I'll see you soon.